Hey, CES, Miss G here. Finishing up on lessons 9, and then this would be lesson 9, then the review of 6 through 9, and then I'm going to go ahead and shut it off, and then I'll put the new lessons 10 through 12 on as well, okay? So right now we are on lesson 9, whole, half, and quarter rests. So we are working on rests. Now, the thing to know about a rest is that they are equal in value to the notes that they correspond to. In other words, a whole rest, which is this one, is exactly the same value or length of time, we call it duration in music, as a whole note. So a whole rest means to rest for a whole measure, okay? If the measure is in 4/4 time, then a whole rest would get all 4 of those beats, okay? And that's what they're showing us here. So a half rest, it says, is equal to half of a whole rest. So we would need to have 2 of these to equal 1 of these, okay? Do you notice the difference between the whole rest and the half rest? A whole rest hangs below the 4th line. A half rest sits above the 3rd line. I often call this a hat rest. When I'm teaching the little ones, the K through 2 students down at CCP, we call it a hat rest. It kind of sounds like half, doesn't it? And the reason I call it that is because if I think of my half rest as sitting above the line, then it looks like a hat. If I were to put my little face below the hat, which I do for them, of course, that's why we call it a hat rest, right? But it is a half rest, and it is half the value of the whole rest. And this is how I teach the whole rest. I say to the kids, a whole rest is so heavy that it can't stand up on its own. It's so heavy that it falls below the line. It just, and the heavier the weight, the more time it's going to take up in music. So this is a whole rest. It takes up more time because it's heavier. This is a half rest. Sometimes we call it a hat rest. It gets half the number of beats. And then the last kind of rest we have is a quarter rest, okay? And it only gets 1 beat in 4/4 time. And guys, quarter rests can be kind of a challenge to draw. And as you get down to number 3, they're going to have you trace some. And I'm going to show you a foolproof way to make a quarter rest. And it is not by tracing these, okay? So that being said, we've got the information that we need up here. Each one of the rests is shown. And then it says a whole rest equals 2 half rests. We just talked about that. And 4 quarter rests. So you need 4 of these to equal 1 of these. You need 2 of these to equal 1 of these, okay? And then down here it says your notes and rests that correspond with each other. I talked about that at the beginning of the video. A whole note is the same value as a whole rest. This is sound, this is silence. So 4 beats of sound, 4 beats of silence. 2 beats of sound, 2 beats of silence. 1 beat of sound, 1 beat of silence, okay? And then it's giving us some combinations. It says in 4/4 time, and that's our most common time signature right there. In fact, it's even called common time. Sometimes when we show 4/4 time, it looks like this. It just shows the letter C, because C stands for common. It is the most common time in music. And it says in 4/4 time, a quarter rests are equal to 1 beat, just like the quarter note. So here's 1 beat, here's 2 beats, here's 3 beats, here's 4 beats. Sound, silence, sound, silence. Half rests are equal to 2 beats. Here's a half note. 1, 2, it gets 2 beats. And then here's beat 3, 4. 3, 4 is also 2 beats, even though it comes on count 3, 4. Don't let that confuse you. Some people get confused. Well, wait a minute. If I'm counting to 4, why isn't it 4 beats? Because this gets the first 2 beats, the half note, And then the half rest gets the next two beats, which are 3 and 4. The last one shows us a whole rest. It gets all 4 beats, okay, in 4/4 time. Now we begin our exercises. Number 1 says, fill in the correct number. There's only one number that's going to go in each blank, all right? It says 2 because 2 half notes are equal to a whole note. In number 1, they've done that one for you. In letter B, or at letter B, it shows 1 quarter note is equal to a half note. How many quarter notes am I going to need to equal a half note? Well, we know a half note gets 2. We just said that. And so if it gets 2 and a quarter note gets 1, then I'm going to need to have how many of these to equal 2 beats? I'm going to need 2 of those, right? So I'm going to need 2 quarter notes to equal a half note. So I'm going to put in my number 2. It's not a very good 2. I'm going to just, it kind of went on the line. Let's see if I can fix that. There. A nice clear number 2, okay? Then it says a half note equals, how many half notes do I need for 4 quarter notes? So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 beats, but I'm going to only have 2 beats if I use 1 half note. How many half notes am I going to need to equal 4 quarters? Okay, I hope you still said the number 2. I need 2 half notes to equal 4 quarter notes. Okay, and then I have a whole note. We know it gets 4, and then I have 4 quarter notes. How many whole notes do I need? I hope you said 1. Okay, and then we get to the next one, and it's giving you this similar idea, but it's showing you the rest values. How many whole rests do I need to equal 2 half rests? How many half rests do I need to equal 4 quarter rests? So remember, the whole rest gets 4. Remember, 2 half rests is 1, 2, 3, 4. So how many whole rests did I need to equal 4 beats? You got it, just 1. Okay, I'm letting you do the rest of those by yourself. Miss G is not going to give you all the answers. On number 3, remember it said trace the second quartered rest and then draw 4 more. I don't know. Every time I've gone to do that and I go to draw my next 4, they don't come out too great. And one of the reasons is because they make these on a computer. They're fancy-dancy. I'm going to show you a foolproof way to make a quarter rest using 2 letters. I'm going to use the letter Z, and I'm going to use the letter C. Okay? And I'm going to take my Z, and I'm going to put my Z starting on the 4th line of the staff. And I'm just going to make my letter Z, kind of curl it up a little bit and bring it down. There's my Z. That's a letter Z. That's all it is. It started on the 4th line, and I just made a Z. Below my letters Z, I'm going to take that, and I'm going to make a letter C right underneath it. So I have a Z, and watch, a C. I've got a beautiful rest. And guess what? Mine actually look more like the rest that Mozart used to draw. So I'm going to do the letter Z. I'm going to make a better one, and C. So when we practice making a quarter rest, and we're in kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, we call it a ZC. And we make ZC rests over and over, and then we can fancy them up later. But making my letter Z first, followed by my letter C. And I make 4 of those in a row, okay? On the next one, it says fill in the second half rest and then draw 4 more. I want you to remember that a half rest sits above the line. So I can't let it touch the top of the line. If I do that, I won't be able to tell if it's a half rest or a whole rest. So I have to make it small enough that it still has space above it. So I'm going to make it shorter and make it match the ones ahead of it. Okay, and I'm just going to draw 4 more of those. When I get to the whole rest, easy peasy, I'm going to let it hang below the line, and I'm just going to draw it right next to that, 4. Okay, so I'm practicing. On number 6, it says divide the staff below into 4 measures. Hey, guess what? You did that over and over again on lesson 8. You did it on lesson 7. We're doing it again on lesson 9. So if you don't remember, you can always look back. But all we're doing is dividing into 4 measures. We're putting that double bar at the end. So I'm going to start. I got to open my page so I can see that double bar at the end. Remember, I make my thick bar and then a small one in front. So I've got my double bar now. And now I'm going to divide it, as it says, into 4 measures. And I'm going to add my time signature. We did this on our last number 8. We put our 4, 4 in. We divided it into 4 measures. That's exactly what I'm doing here. Dividing it up into those 4 measures. And I'm thinking about where are my 4 measures going to fit. Remember, I'm only using 3 bar lines. Only 3. So I made my little ticks at the top because I want that to come out. Let's see if I can turn this the right way for you. I made my little ticks. Come on, Miss G. I'm reading upside down, by the way, and backwards. Parents, if you're watching, I have no reflection of the screen. So kids, I hope you're being forgiving to Miss G here, but I am doing it backwards. So I'm making my ticks where I'm going to put my bar lines. And I did that so I would make nice equal bar lines to divide my measures equally. And then I erase the little ticks at the top. It's kind of a little cheating, but it works really well because I want them to be even. Remember, I'm putting in my 4, 4. I'm making that fancy 4. I start at the bottom. This is going to pull it back a little bit so you can see this. I start at, let's see if I can get this just right for you. I start at the bottom and I make one straight line going up to the top. And then I bring it, I don't think this is focusing very well. One straight line, then I make a little triangle and I bring it over. That's how I made my 4. Okay, and I'm going to do one right stacked on top of the other. And then it says fill in the first bar with a whole rest. So I'm going to put my whole rest in. And remember, it's got to sit on the 4th line. And it's going to take up the whole measure. So here's the tricky part. When I put in my whole rest, I'm going to make sure, guys, that it's in the center of the measure. Musicians know that anything that takes up the whole measure goes in the center. And then I'm going to make 2 half rests, or hat rests, as my elementary kids call them, and I'm going to equally space them apart so that they each take up the same amount of room as each other. I'm not going to put them close together. That would be incorrect. And then I'm going to draw, what does it say next? The 3rd bar with 4 quarter rests, ZCs. I'm going to do a Z on the 4th line, and then a C from the 3rd, and a Z, and a C. And again, I am spacing them equally. And I got my ZCs in there. And then I get to my very last one, and I am going to fill in my last bar with 1 half rest and 2 quarter rests. So I'm going to put a hat in, 3rd line, hat rest, and then 2 ZCs. Easy peasy. Done. Okay? And I did the whole thing with you on that one, except for number 2, right? Just to kind of give you some ideas on how to make those quarter rests. All right. Guys, we're to the review of lessons 6 through 9. And 6 through 9 is, you've done a lot of figuring out how long to hold notes, and you've also drawn your rests, and you've also put in your stems. Remember, if the stem goes up, it goes on the right. If the stem goes down, it goes on the left. So let's see what they want us to do here. It says, fill in the correct number. So again, they're giving us a half note, and they're saying how many of those do we need for a whole note? How many halves do we need to make a whole? Well, if I have a pie and I cut it in half, how many halves do I need to make a whole? I hope you said 2, because you have a half a pie and a half a pie. Hopefully you don't eat the whole pie, right? So we need 2 half rests. Then it says, how many quarter notes do we need to make a whole? Well, let's just think about the pie for a minute. I'm going to make a pie. And I'm going to make a cherry pie because I love cherry pie. Okay? So I've got my cherry pie here. And all it is a round circle, right? And when we were doing half rests, we cut the cherry pie right in half. And one of you, Riley Joe, gets to eat half the pie. And somebody else gets to eat the other half. That'll be Addison. Addison's going to eat the other half. But now when we're going to use a quarter of the pie, we're going to cut it in half again. How many quarters do we have? 1, 2, 3. That's how many quarter notes we need to make the whole measure. So your answer would be 4. So now Riley Joe and Addison have had to share their pie with 2 more people. All right? And they're going to share it with some 5th graders. They're going to share it with Titan, and they're going to share it with Nigel. Actually, Nigel's a 6th grader, isn't he? Okay? So we're going to now have 4 quarters. On the next question, it says, how many half notes does it take to make 2 quarter notes? Well, we've already got 2 here. And remember, we already had 2 here. So we only need 1 of those. Has nothing to do with the pie. Okay? And number 4 says the duration, remember that's length of time, of a half note is longer or shorter than a quarter note. Well, if you needed 2 of these to make 1 of these, then the half note must be longer or shorter. Circle your answer. Let's see if you circled what I do. Dun, da, da, da. A half note lasts longer. Remember when we clap a half note, we go 1, 2, ah, or we play it and hold our voice. If it's only a quarter note, ah, it's shorter duration. On number 5, it says, when the notes are written on or above the 3rd line, on or above, the stems extend. Remember, when the note goes up, I told you this the other day, the stems go, which is kind of an opposite thing, right? When the note gets higher, the stems go. When the note gets lower, the stems go. So it says when the notes are written on or above the 3rd line. So let's look at this note right here. It's on the 3rd line. Do you see which way the stem's going? It says when the notes are on or above the 3rd line, the stems go. I hope you circled downward. They go down even though the note's going up. On the left side. That's the part that's sometimes tricky. If I put the down stems over here on the notes, they would be off. They'd look funny. In fact, I think I'm going to do it up here because you're going to really see how the difference is. I'm going to put the down stems on the wrong side. And then on the next 2 notes, I'm going to put them on the correct side. Do you see how they just don't somehow look correct here? They are correct here. Okay, so when we get down there, you'll know. Put them on the left when they go down. Number 6 says, music is divided into equal parts. Remember what I told us earlier today. When we were dividing our notes with the bar lines, when we were dividing our staff with the bar lines, we made 4 of these. What were those called? They are so important because, guys, when we're singing, Miss G often says, hey, guys, we're going to be at number 22. And I say, it's not just number 22, it's measure 22. Remember? M-E-A-S-U-R-E. It's divided into equal parts by, oh, I am so sorry. It's divided by bar lines. I didn't think they'd said anything about measures yet. And then it makes the measures. Okay, so the answer is bar lines. Number 7, a blank is written at the end of a piece of music. Do you remember what we had to do? We made a thick one and a thin one, and we called it not a single scoop of ice cream, but a double bar. Okay? The upper number of the time signature indicates how many blank are in each measure. So now we're thinking about our time signature. We're thinking about the 4/4, or maybe it's 3/4 or 2/4. What does the top number tell you? It tells you how many blank are in a measure. Now let's say I don't know what I don't know. I'm going to guess. No, I'm not. I'm going to look back and I'm going to see. Now that note has to be here or that answer has to be here somewhere. I wonder where it is. Where did it talk to me about the numbers? Half note, whole note, look back at lesson 8, guys, and look at where they show the big 4/4. That's going to give you the answer on number 8 on the review, okay? And I'm not going to tell you what it is because it's right there. It also gives you the answer to number 9, okay? When you get to number 10, it's showing you your half rest, and it's asking you to tell what it's called. I just told you. Did you write it down when I said it? A half. And then it says in 4/4 time, it rests for how many beats? So remember, half the pie. If you're each getting a half a pie, then there's 2 beats. And then so on. Number 11 says draw 4/4 rests. That's your ZC. 4th line down to the 2nd line. I'm going to draw 4 of those. Draw 2 half rests. You know how to do that. Draw a whole rest. And then in number 12, guys, it says in the example below, draw a treble clef. I'm going to put my treble clef in right at the beginning. And notice how I do it right after I read it. I don't go, okay, I'm going to draw a treble clef. I'm going to put in my time signature. I'm going to add the... Nope, I do one step at a time. Draw in my treble clef. Add my 4/4. I'm making my straight lines and my triangles. I added my 4/4. Then it says, add the stems where necessary. Okay, so now I'm going to put my stems in. If my notes are lower than the 3rd line, my stems go up on the right. Where am I? Right there. If my notes go higher than the 3rd line, my stems go down like I did in that measure, remember? On the left. Put your stems in all the way across. Does this need a stem? A whole note never needs a stem. It's the only note in the measure. Does a half note need stems? There's 2 of them. They do. Okay. Then it says, write the beats under the notes. Remember, I'm counting to 4, so I'm writing 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just writing in my beats right underneath, just like they did back on this page. Go back to lesson 8 or 9 and lesson 9 and look at how they counted underneath. That's what you're doing. And I know that when I have a half note, that I have to have 2 beats on each note. And if you remember, I taught you something. I taught you a little trick. I taught you to write in beat 1 and then parentheses around 2, which means 1, 2 is held, 3, 4 is held. And so by the time I get to my whole note, I'm actually holding beats. I sound beat 1 and I hold 2, 3, 4. And that's important. If I'm playing my recorder, for instance, and I know it's a whole note, then I have to be able to know how long to hold it. If I go, That's a quarter note because it went one beat. Here's a half note. That's 1, 2. Here's a whole note. That one got all 4 beats. Okay? So I sounded it and then I held it. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's why we write in our parentheses. On number 13, guys, we're adding bar lines. And wait a minute. Did we get everything in 12? Add the stems, write the beats. Yes, we did. Okay? Number 13, add bar lines and a double bar to the example below. Okay, I'm just going to do my double bar at the end. Remember, one step at a time. And I'm in 4/4, so I go 1, 2, 3, 4, add a bar line. 1, 2, 3, 4, add a bar line. And then, after I've added all my bar lines, they want me to count it and clap it. So, do you remember how we did that? How we counted half notes and quarter notes and whole notes? Here's your quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's your half. 1, 2, 3, 4. How did we do those whole notes? 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm looking at 13. I've got 4 quarter notes, 2 half notes, 4 quarter notes, 1 whole note, and then I have a combined measure of half note, quarter, quarter, half note, quarter, 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 whole, right? So I'm going to practice my clapping. 1, and you know what? I think I'll say tas and ta-ahs. That helps me. Ta, 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 ta. So that was 4 quarter notes and 2 half notes. I'm on measure 3. Ta, 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 ta. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's my whole note. Ta, 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 ta. Whole, 2, 3, 4. Okay? I'm going to do the whole thing. Clap it with me. Are you ready? Look at your music. Don't look at me. You got to watch your music so you know what you're clapping, okay? And I'm going to point. Actually, no, I'm not, because then you would be watching up here. I'm just going to clap it. Clap it with me. Ta, 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 and I got to my very last whole note there, okay? So make sure your eyes are in your music. Practice along with that a couple times and see if you can figure out how to clap that, okay? On number 14, the end of number 13, we got to fill in our note names. They're making us work now because we've done all of these things previously. So I'm looking at treble clef notes right now. So I'm going to write in my notes using capital letters below the staff. Notice the first ones go in alphabetical order, A, B, C, D, right? And then I get to number 14. It says fill in the missing beats with notes in the second space, but you only get to add 1 note in each measure. So I'm looking and I go, oh, well, what does that have to do with bass clef? Nothing. Beats always stay the same, but when it's in bass clef, your letters change, don't they? Do we have anything to do with letters? No, they just want your beats. So they want to know, in the first measure, I've got 1, 2, 3, and I'm missing beat 4. Is it going to be a whole note for 4 beats long, a half note for 2 beats, or is it going to be a quarter note for 1? We only needed 1 beat, so it's going to be a quarter note, okay? And I'm just going to put it right on the same space that we've already been working, and I'm going to add my stem. All right, so now I have 1, 2, 3, 4. And you know what really helps me? And I would do this if I were you. I would write in your beats. Because if you write in the beats, you're going to be sure you get the right number. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I've got 1, 2, and I'm missing, I only get to put in one note. I'm missing 3, 4. So I'm going to write my beats. 1, 2. What's going to give me 3, 4? It's going to be a note with 2 beats because I need beat 3 and beat 4. So what is it going to be? I hope you wrote down a half note because it's got to get 2 beats, just like this one did. 1, 2, 3, 4. You'll do the rest on your own, okay? On number 14, letter B, it says fill in the missing beats with rest. So on this one you were putting in the note, and on this one you're putting in the rests. And remember guys, notes and rests are equal to each other. One is sound, one is silence. So I've got a half note, so I would need I hope you said it, a half rest. Remember, it's going to go right above that third line, and it's going to sit up there just like a hat. 1, 2, 3, 4. I might want to write my beats in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just so I know something's missing. When I get to the second measure, I've got 1, 2, 3, but I can feel like something's weird here. There's a space right here. So that probably tells me that my beat's going to need to go here rather than over here because this one's held. So I've got space for another beat. So this must be beat 2 and this must be 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. What beat are we missing? Right after the bar line, it always begins with beat 1. So beat 1 is missing. And beat 1, if it's one beat, we know it's going to be not a half note, not a whole note, but a what? Think. Which one gets 1? Did you put down a quarter note? Did you make sure your stem was going down because it's on the third line or above? Okay, it's got to be filled in. It's got to have a stem. All those things have to be present because you've done all that work already. I'm not going to do the rest for you. I know you can do this. Fill them in, take your pictures, upload them to Google Classroom, or you can send them to me via email if that works for you, although it doesn't get it back to you as quickly as it does on Google Classroom. Okay? We're done with 6 through 9, guys. I'll do another video of 10, 11, and 12, and that'll be coming your way really quickly. All right. Happy Theory Days and happy music. And hey, I hope you have a good weekend. You got one coming up, I hope. All right.